directorate, but for the last 4 months, I've also been the regional lead for Covid-19 Health and Wellbeing support, part of the workforce cell that's really been focusing on how we can support our workforce during this really difficult time. And I've been asked to show you some of the different offers that are available, both nationally and also locally here in the Southeast, to support you and your teams to really focus in on your health and well-being during this time, and obviously as we move forwards into what will be probably a challenging winter as well. So lovely to be speaking to you, and what I'll do is I've got some slides that will support me through that process. So I will do the technological piece now of just hopefully sharing my screen with you and talking you through those different offers. Okay. So as I say, this is very much an update on that national wellbeing offer, which is actually a really considerable offer now, as it's been developed over the last 4 months, very much using robust model and a kind of clinical evidence base around what is the right offer to put forward for our staff at the right time. And so the national team have been working really hard with experts in major incidents such as the Manchester bombing, colleagues in the armed forces, to really focus in on what we know around trauma, emotional and psychological support during really unprecedented events. And so very much this has been focusing on a model now that's called PAR. So that's prepare, active and recover. So very much thinking about what's the right intervention, and also really acknowledging maybe where people are at during those different stages. So in terms of prepare, which in fairness we didn't have an awful lot of time for, that was very much around kind of questions around, oh my goodness, what's going to actually happen? What am I going to be asked to do? You know, will I be able to manage this? And then as we moved very quickly, I think, into kind of the end of March and April, very much almost into kind of, actually, this is the very active phase. It was absolutely that very intense and consuming period of work. Many of us either were working incredibly long hours in very difficult circumstances in some of our health and care settings, you know, having to work differently, having to use different equipment, or many of us also were suddenly having to pivot and work from home, and there was the blurring around kind of when does work begin and end. And often during that active phase, we ignore our own needs because we're worrying about everything else and everyone else. And we're constantly worrying about, am I doing enough? How am I doing? Is this what's needed? I'm figuring this out as I go along. And then as we move into recover, there's that sense of, actually, I got through this and I've maybe done some pieces of work that I just didn't imagine I would ever manage to do. For some of our colleagues, they will have made some very tough decisions around, for example, who to ventilate and who not to ventilate. And maybe I've kind of made it through. Other people have lost colleagues along the way. How did that happen? And that sense of just needing some time to genuinely process, what is the experience I've been through? And what would I do if this happened again? And I think a key lesson for me here is there has to be something around giving people time to process some of that reflection, really. But what I suppose the interesting thing is there's never been that neat sequence between these different phases. They don't just neatly begin and end. Those different boundaries between prepare and active, which was very much where we were having to try and prepare ourselves whilst activity was beginning to increase. And equally, we're not neatly now on the other side in terms of recover, because we still have COVID patients. We are still in this kind of strange in-between stage where things aren't back to normal, but they're not quite as intense as they were. So in terms of the focus around that psychological model, the evidence base that we've got, this is really the focus for colleagues, line managers, leaders, how to focus in on the different elements of support that we need to offer. So in terms of prepare, absolutely, it was about being here for people and making people understand that there was support, whether from their line manager or their organisation. We're here, we're trying to figure this out, but we are here, we want to listen to you. Absolutely trying to help people prepare psychologically for maybe what was expected. And absolutely getting some training in to help line managers have some psychologically informed conversations. We didn't necessarily in this instance have an awful lot of time to do that preparation. So that's some work that's ongoing to help line managers have those really effective and informed conversations. Absolutely in the active phase, that's when a lot of the National Health and Wellbeing offers were launched. So a wide variety of different apps around mental health, sleep, anxiety, meditation were made available, a telephone support line, places to decompress. So just a peer space where people can just think through the experience they've been through and what they've learned. And the most important piece here is about normalizing stress, because stress actually is a normal reaction. And the vast majority of people will experience stress and with the right kind of decompressing spaces, be able to process that and move forwards. So the key thing in the active phase is to not overly offer therapeutic interventions at this time, which is strange. That almost feels counterintuitive. And I know a lot of our organizations, we're really in the midst of thinking, absolutely, we're going to align our psychologist team to different parts of our service. And we had to work quite hard to say, that's great, but maybe not yet. We just need to allow people at the end of a busy shift some space just to try and think through what they've been through. But we need to give people the space to figure this out, because the vast majority of people will. As we move into recover, though, that's a different approach, because that's probably where more of our therapeutic offers will start to kick in. Because actually during the recovery phases, when more of the kind of experiences of trauma can show up, because often things are kind of triggered after the high stress period. So that's really understanding that we've got services in place to support people. And as I say, they will be the minority, but people who have really experienced some of those elements of stress that has shifted into a kind of more traumatic experience, and maybe experiencing things like anxiety or depression or some PTSD. The key thing there is spotting that early, knowing how to kind of manage people in those conversations and signpost them critically to where they can get fast access to help. And that's exactly how we're designing the offer as we move forwards into the winter period. I suppose the challenge that we have is there's nothing, as I said, neat or linear around how we move through COVID and this particular pandemic. It seems to come in waves, I think. So absolutely, there was that kind of first shock wave of hang on, we've all gone into lockdown, our services are being completely redesigned here to focus on just purely kind of predominantly COVID activity. I may be deployed or working in a completely different team. And then absolutely in that demand of just getting on with the job and working through that. Then the shockwave too is probably a little bit of kind of where we've been recently. I'm working really hard still, but as we've said, the clapping has stopped, and some of those other kind of real focuses on that peak time have begun to kind of calm down. And so it's about trying to readjust to what this, and people use this term, and I don't know if it's very helpful, it's just new rather than new normal, but this new way that we're working now, which will go on for a while. And then as activity truly begins to settle, as we said, that's when people may well present with some of the kind of actually either I've managed to process this, as we say, the vast majority of people do, or actually I'm noticing that there's something I'm carrying with me and I have been impacted this and I need some help and some support to work that through. So in terms of how we've designed that key recovery phase, so that final phase that's really going to help people have the right support at the right time to help them move through some of those perhaps impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic. So very much focusing on helping individuals understand what they've been through, their own stress response, and how that may show up and what help they might need. How we help teams work together and have really safe conversations with each other. So there's that key piece of peer support for people. You're not alone. Other people have been through this, and how we can support and care for each other. Then absolutely, what's my role as a line manager in having those really important one-to-ones with my team that feel compassionate and supportive and show that I'm listening and that I'm aware that I can pick up any cues where perhaps someone is saying, either I don't think I'm managing very well, or one thing we have to factor in is people may not tell us that, and we may need to be trying to spot that we think people maybe aren't managing so well. And equally then, what does that look like across our organisation? So what's in place in an organisation that can offer some of that support? So those might be decompression spaces, we've had wobble rooms, we've had the most innovative, amazing offers within some of our organisations. And what we're trying to do as a national team is really set out clearly what good looks like for our organisations to really show that they are supporting their staff. And finally, as a system, what's there in the wider space, again, around maybe perhaps some very specific support that might be as part of the kind of IAP services that can really support our staff during this difficult time. And then all of that information is available on a special web page that's been created for the COVID response, which is the people.nhs.uk, where all of these offers are really clearly explained and articulated, and where you can log on and access support straight away. So a little bit about those offers. So in terms of designing what's available right now, we have a frontline listening line for all staff with really extended operating hours that is just there to do exactly that. It's a safe space if you're feeling just emotional, challenged, need someone to listen right now. And that's provided through the Samaritans, who've done a fantastic job in doing exactly what they do best, which is just listening and supporting people. And then potentially redirecting people to different services depending on what their needs are. And absolutely acknowledging that we may have lost family and we may have lost friends and colleagues at work. There is a dedicated bereavement and loss support line as well, which has been run by Hospice UK. And again, that is dedicated professionals working in that space who know how to support people in that really, really difficult and emotional time. Absolutely, then in terms of online, there's a range of toolkits and resources that you can access, sort of little kind of articles and sort of self-help guides. There are some fantastic webinars that have also been recorded on YouTube as well that have been run by the Health and Wellbeing team, and they draw on a whole range of different themes and topics. We have a series of apps which have been donated to the NHS for a period of time, which is fantastic. So those are free to download, and I really encourage everyone to download these apps. They are absolutely brilliant. So Unmind and Headspace, really focusing on giving people time to kind of maybe think through and do some meditation, have some pauses. Sleepio, which really focuses on helping us really focus on the quality of our sleep. Daylight, which focuses on our CBT and using that to support issues of anxiety. And Liberate, which is a protected space for our BAME colleagues to connect and work through their experiences. There is also one-to-one help through a qualified coach or psychological practitioner. So again, this is available right now. You can log on and sign up for 3 support sessions. And then there is amazing self-guided mental health learning through Silver Cloud. Very importantly, there are some common rooms as well. So this is where you can just sign up and log into a shared peer support space with colleagues from around the country. If you just want to have a shared space conversation to help you process what you're going through. And then in recognizing that we have some different communities who may need some specialist support. We have the provision of Filipino staff and also Tagalog speaking helpline, again provided through Hospice UK. So a really broad range of support. So here's a little bit more information about the apps that I mentioned, and they are fantastic. These apps were often kind of monthly subscription models that the providers have offered free to the NHS, which is just brilliant. And a couple of quotes there from different colleagues who speak about how impactful that they have been. But there's a consultant anaesthetist there saying that they've had the best sleep they've had maybe in about 5 years. And equally, the mindfulness apps, just having that space to really focus on lowering that stress response through breathing and being conscious of the present moment, really, really helpful. And as I say, Liberate, which is a newer app, really acknowledging that our BAME colleagues have been disproportionately impacted and need some specialist support. So if you're wanting to find support as a leader, so the key piece is in order for me to lead and support my staff, I need to look after myself too. If I'm not feeling well and supported, I'm not going to be able to support the teams I lead. So there are resources specifically curated for leaders during this time. So absolutely looking at some coaching and mentoring for our leaders. What we're calling leadership support circles, which is again bringing together leaders from around the country who can offer a kind of facilitated support, have a conversation on how you're finding things, supporting others, what help you might need to do that really well. And then, as I say, building on some fantastic evidence from our colleagues, both in the armed services and people who've led kind of major incidences. There are some really key evidence-based behaviours that are critical to help lead colleagues through COVID-19. And again, they're all on the NHS People space in that area highlighted in the yellow circle. What is important is that we are listening all the time and really analysing the data that's coming through from these different offers to figure out and understand what we need to offer next. And what we'll be doing over winter is continuously adding to this site in terms of different interventions that are right at the right time. So in terms of the National Helpline, there has been a significant number of calls. And so what we are doing is listening to what the needs are, whether that's actually I'm feeling I need some help in working through my relationships because now I'm working from home, which is a real example. And so therefore we're now exploring a partnership approach with Relate to see if they can come on board and offer some specific support. So there is that real sense that we will listen confidentially and then understand what we may need to offer in terms of additional support. But amazing downloads in terms of those apps and lots of those website visits. But I think the key thing for me is if I think about the population of the NHS, we're doing really well, but we can go a lot further in terms of making sure people are aware that this offer is here and it is a really good offer. So in terms of frequent issues, absolutely. Have I that overwhelming sense that if I'm asking for help, am I in some way failing or less or not doing as well as others? And of course, actually being able to ask for help when you need it is, I think, one of the kind of key leadership behaviours of anyone, because leadership exists at all levels, to know that actually I need a bit more help in this. It is, I think, a really brave thing a really courageous thing. But of course, people often feel guilty about that. There's also been some really practical things around money. There's obviously the impact, perhaps maybe if we're still working for the NHS, that our partners, family members may be losing jobs. So how can we address some of those really practical money concerns? And absolutely thinking about some of those bereavement issues. So in terms of some recent additions, we've offered a further guide for individuals and teams returning from shielding. That, as I said, that specific offer in terms of our BAME staff. So that's not just the Liberate app, but we've also got some culturally diverse common rooms as well, where colleagues can meet up with other BAME colleagues to talk about their experiences. Some React training, which I'll come on to next. And then also how to talk to your children about Black Lives Matter. So there's been some really profound social movement issues that have also emerged during this time. And there are lots of other guides, by the way, in there about how to chat to your children about the pandemic, about loss, because it's a really difficult period, not only to support ourselves, but how do we support our families as well through this process. So in terms of the React mental health conversation training, so this is about empowering managers, supervisors, and those who have that key role in supporting others to really help you support others in terms of their mental health. So it's how you can hold those supportive and compassionate conversations during and also much beyond COVID-19, so that you're able to listen and help people either process in that kind of 70% of people managing to do that bit of processing their stress well, and how you can focus on maybe around maybe 30% or so of people who may need that little bit of extra help just in terms of processing what they've been through. So please follow the link there. These book up really quickly, by the way, but we are constantly adding more dates. So don't be disheartened if you look and you think, oh no, there's no dates, they've all been booked up. We are constantly adding more dates in terms of this particular offer. So in terms of ongoing support, so these offers will continue, and that's very much a promise within the NHS People Plan, which will be published very, very soon. This concept of how we help people stay well during winter and as we move beyond COVID. So absolutely, in that recovery framework, we will include offers and also much more offers around support to our BAME colleagues and how we continue to support teams and leaders during this next phase. This has always been designed to complement your local organisational offers and what exists in regions. And certainly that's been a part of my job as a regional COVID-19 Health and Wellbeing lead, is to work through your health and wellbeing leads in your organisations, and also at a system level as well, to make sure that these are standing alongside some of the excellent local offers within your organisations. And we'll be continuing to do that to really help that health and wellbeing community continue to support you. So all of those offers, as I said, are on that www.people.nhs.uk site. And there will be these monthly virtual wellbeing sessions in terms of the Horizons webinars, and they have been brilliantly well attended, in the thousands, because they are hugely informative. So they're normally an hour on a Wednesday afternoon. As I said, initially they were weekly, then they were bi-monthly, and now they've moved to monthly, but really informative. And all of the past webinars can be accessed through that link as well. So I guess the ask really is, do please signpost your staff and take advantage of these offers and all of the tools and resources that are available on that site now and as we move into winter. My encouragement would be just encourage everyone at least to go and visit the site and have a kind of virtual wander around and familiarise themselves with the offer. I would download the apps. If not for you, it's great because they're available for your family as well. And then finally, in terms of support in the Southeast, so we've been running a kind of bi-monthly lunch and learn Teams call with all of the health and wellbeing leads across the Southeast. Again, it was initially weekly during the really active phase, but that's an open door session. You don't have to be a health and wellbeing lead. We're joined by equality, diversity and inclusion leads, and just other practitioners who are interested in this space. And anyone can join. We've been running the production of themed health and wellbeing resources bulletins in the Southeast, because we were aware that certainly at the very beginning there was almost a little bit of a kind of overwhelm feeling in terms of just how many resources were being made available and where were they coming from. Was that national, regional, system, local? And so we've created 13 different bulletins that we're finally now curating into one resource. So again, we can share the link through to Jacqueline and your colleagues in terms of coordinating your support as allied health professionals, so you can have access to those curated resources as well. And one thing that we've suggested is that we need some health and wellbeing hubs at a system level to support the organisations to offer an even enhanced level of kind of collaboration and support. And very positively, there is a permanent role being recruited to in terms of the head of staff experience and engagement, James Watkins, who'll be joining very soon. And I'll be passing the baton over to James very shortly. And James is supported at that regional level, and he'll have a health and wellbeing manager dedicated to support him in this work. So again, do have a look at the People website. If not, do get in touch, and we can always direct you to where there is resource at the right place for you. So I think the key thing is the best way to stay in touch is to sign up for these different websites and keep checking them so you can see all of the different resources that are coming on track, and really consider being part of a wellbeing community. And that very much is through that tribe.horizonsnhs.com. That's where we almost all of us take on responsibility and be champions for colleagues' health and wellbeing at this time. So just to conclude, the key piece of all of this is all of us are best able to care for others when we care for ourselves. And absolutely, this piece, you can't pour from an empty cup. So the key lesson in all of this, and it's the first of those 10 leadership behaviours, is look after yourself. Make sure you have the support and resources you need to manage this amazing and unprecedented situation as well as you can. Please get in touch if you've got any questions. And it's just been very lovely joining you and hopefully helping you understand a little bit more around the offers that are available, both nationally, but also regionally, to support you during this time. So absolutely, please do get in touch. We'd love to hear from you. So just in conclusion, it's been really nice to spend some time with you, and please do have a look at the people.nhs.uk website and access all of those offers. It's really important. Thank you.